Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you've been enjoying your spring break. I know I certainly have. It's been a beautiful, rainy Friday for me. So I actually got to go outside after the rain stopped and got to enjoy the fresh air. I've been going on plenty of walks, even though sometimes the weather's been a little bit chilly. But I hope, as you guys have heard, we're going to be extending our quarantine time, so we won't be going back to school next week. So instead, we'll be continuing doing these virtual classrooms. I hope you guys are still looking onto Google Classroom for updates. I'm going to be much more regularly updating this every day. Next week, this is your primary spot, Google Classroom, for all of your history and mathematics needs. I hope you guys are also kind of taking this time as to be with your family. You know, there's really nowhere else that we get to go, is there? There's some parks that are still open, but movie theaters are closed, restaurants are closed. But even in this kind of confusing time, I hope you guys are seeing this as an opportunity. I'm using it as an opportunity to get some reading done, to do some writing, to relax a little bit, and also to stay in touch with my family. I hope you guys are using this as time to be around your families. And we live in a really crazy and fast-paced world, and if anything else in this time period, if this causes us to slow down a little bit and appreciate all the great things that God gives us, I couldn't say that there's a better result from that, isn't there? This video is a hybrid of questions and answers, and also I had a request from a 6th grader to do a video on Kuwait. Kuwait is a very, very short topic, so I thought I'd combine this both. So we're at the 2-minute mark right now of this video. I'm going to talk about Kuwait for about 3 minutes. So if you want to go to the questions and answers video, go to about the 5-minute mark, okay? Kuwait in 3 minutes. Ready, go. Why are the borders in the Middle East the way they are? Well, it's actually not really natural borders, okay? Remember, these are desert areas, so there is no natural rivers to divide countries the way they are. And a lot of the times, these nations were formed without the people who were living in there having any say into it, okay? And that was really the case for Kuwait, too. You'll notice that if you look at a map of the Middle East, Kuwait is a very small little area off the coast of the Persian Gulf, on the coast of the Persian Gulf, just south of Iraq, and it's kind of sandwiched in between Iraq and Saudi Arabia. And you're saying to yourself, why does this place exist? Why isn't it part of Saudi Arabia? Why isn't it part of Iraq? Well, Kuwait was a city, Kuwait City, and it was founded in the 1600s, okay? And of course, it was being on the coast, it made a lot of money through trade. Just like a lot of cities in history, being on the coast was very beneficial to the Kuwait people. It was called something that we like to call a sheikdom, okay? A sheik is very similar to, in Western society, what we would call like a duke. Or kind of a king. It's a leader of a tribal or kingdom in Arab lands. Okay? So Kuwait was able to keep its independence for all these years because it had a lot of money. It was able to kind of buy protection. This also continued on as it became a British protectorate. The Brits did not put it into Iraq. They recognized its importance. Eventually, Kuwait achieves its independence after World War II, along with several other areas. And then oil is discovered, and Kuwait has a ton of oil in it, but it also is in a very important spot where it can be a trade hub for oil in the Middle East. That's what it's allowed it to be a very important Arab power. The only time it's really ever seen a lot of hostility was in the 1990s when Iraq invaded Kuwait in order to obtain both money and the oil fields of Kuwait. This was called the Persian Gulf War, the first Persian Gulf War, where Operation Desert Storm, the United States comes in, along with some other NATO allies, and kicks them out. As kind of a wrap-up for Kuwait today is probably one of the more freer societies in the Arab world. It is not a democracy. It's still a kingdom with a sheik in power, but it also has some voting. Women are allowed to have a lot of rights. Not as much as like in a Western democracy, but if I could pick a Arab nation to go visit and spend a few months in, and it'd be kind of similar to the United States, Kuwait would be at the top of the list. Okay, so that's a little bit about Kuwait. Thanks for that sixth grader suggestion. That's one that we would not normally talk about. But keep them coming if you have weird, or not weird, but like obscure areas in any of the subjects that we're talking about that you want to talk about, okay? So I got some questions here, and sixth graders, my applause goes out to you for asking so many great questions. Seventh and eighth graders, you guys got to step up your game a little bit. Sixth graders are killing it right now. First question, we were talking about in our sixth grade video about Herod's temple. Why didn't the Romans rebuild it? Well, the biggest question is, why would they? Okay? You just took down a rebellion that was based on a religious organization, that was the Jews. Why would you rebuild their big symbol? It was a gathering point for the rebellion. A lot of bloodshed. So basically the Romans said, we're not going to rebuild this. We had to take care of all the Jewish rebellions. We're not going to help you guys out. Okay. Another question was, how did Alexander the Great die? Alexander the Great died before he was 35. He was actually, I'm only a few years younger than Alexander the Great when he died. There are several theories as to what killed Alexander the Great. You know, this happened over 2,500 years ago, so it's kind of hard to tell. Was he killed in a conspiracy, poisoned by his wife? Was he struck down by the Olympian gods, like Zeus? Was he, attacked by an assassin? He died of, basically, bad drinking water, is one of the main theories. Kind of anticlimactic, isn't it? Keep in mind, this is before extremely well-modernized plumbing and water systems. So you also had localized diseases that would kill people relatively easily. So one disease in this part of the world would not be the same in the areas that Alexander grew up in and had natural immunities to. So he died of disease. Disease kills a lot of people in history, which is a fun thought during these time periods. But it's a very anticlimactic end for one of the greatest generals in human history. Another question was, why was it called the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire? The original capital of the Byzantine Empire was Nicaea, and then it was moved to a little fishing town in Turkey called Byzantium. Okay? This comes to the point where people are really bad at naming stuff, and this is kind of how historians' biases affect the way we understand history. So Byzantium eventually becomes the famous city called Constantinople. Today it's modern-day Istanbul in Turkey, if you have a map. The Byzantines were the Romans. They did not call themselves the Byzantines. They called themselves the Roman Empire. The emperor was not called the Byzantine Empire. Emperor, he was called the Roman Empire, and he traced his lineage back to the Caesars. The reason that we in history call it the Byzantine Empire is because historians like narratives. We like when history is a story. And in 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire fell. And so that starts what we call the Dark Ages, even though it wasn't really that dark. The sun didn't go away. But the problem is that the Roman Empire did not go away until 1453, I believe, when the Ottoman Empire conquers Constantinople. It kind of doesn't fit in the narrative that historians like. Roman Empire falls, Dark Ages happen, then Middle Ages. Because what happens is Roman Empire in the West falls, but the Eastern Roman Empire goes through another 1,000 years. So that's why they called it the Byzantine Empire, to kind of separate it. But just keep in mind, no person living in the Byzantine Empire ever called themselves Byzantine. They would call themselves Romans, because that's what they were. They were Romans. And finally, there was a question about the Crusades. Why were the Seljuk Turks raiding pilgrims? Well, let's think about this. If you could take 10% of someone's wealth or 100% of someone's wealth, which one would you do? You would probably take the 100%, right? And that's what the Seljuks were thinking. They were saying, hey, instead of just taking like the 10% of taxes that we could take from these Christians, why don't we just kill them and take all of their wealth? And that's what they did. Okay? Great questions. I also saw a request for the Ottoman Empire as a video. Thank you for asking for that. Stay tuned for next week because I have in the works an Ottoman Empire video. Keep bringing in the suggestions. Keep bringing in your questions, and I will keep making videos. I hope you guys had a good spring break. We'll have some more regular assignments and readings like that next week as we get into more of a school atmosphere. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. God bless you all. Bye-bye.